Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
Roxanne and the kids had just entered the mansion when she saw Jack sitting in the living room. "Ah, you're all home." Jack greeted them with a smile. "Mr. Damaris came over this afternoon. I had him wait in the living room since he's a friend of yours, Miss Jarvis," Elisa said as she came out of the kitchen. Roxanne nodded in response and motioned for Archie and Benny to go and wash their hands. However, they refused to budge and stood there staring at Jack. "We were just talking about Mr. Damaris today. Who would have thought we'd bump into him so soon?" Benny's eyes were filled with resentment as he glared at Jack. Naturally, Jack was well aware of Benny's hostility, but he pretended to not notice it. "So what brings you here today, Mr. Damaris?" Roxanne asked in confusion. Jack lifted his chin slightly and gestured at her to look at the single-seater couch on the right. Roxanne saw a medium-sized basket on the couch, but she couldn't make out what was inside. "So what is this?" she asked with a frown. Jack arched an eyebrow as he replied, "I told you about this before, didn't I? Our family would grant you access to our ancient medicine books if you become our business partner. My grandfather had me bring these over. Said they might be of help to you, Dr. Jarvis." Roxanne's eyes lit up when she heard that those were the Damaris family's ancient medicine books. She quickly walked up to the couch and opened the basket. Sure enough, it was filled with all the ancient medicine books that she had wanted really badly before. "Thank you very much, Mr. Damaris. These are just what I needed," Roxanne said in a cheerful tone. Jack flashed her a faint smile in response. "It's my grandfather you should be thanking. Of course, you can thank me tomorrow if you'd like." Noticing the confused look on Roxanne's face, he continued, "Your research institute is running out of medicinal herbs, right? I just purchased a new batch. They should be arriving tomorrow." The smile on Roxanne's face faded slightly when she heard that. "You're being far too kind, Mr. Damaris. I don't know how I'll ever be able to repay you." Jack was about to say something when Benny called out to Roxanne from the bathroom, Mommy, we've run out of soap." Archie and Benny had been listening in on the conversation from outside the bathroom. Roxanne was still upset about Essie on the way home, but she suddenly sounded all happy after seeing Jack. Given how quickly her mood had changed because of Jack, it was only natural that Archie and Benny would get the wrong idea. Benny got so upset that he had to interrupt their conversation. Of course, Roxanne didn't give it much thought at the time. She flashed Jack a polite smile and excused herself to fetch the kids a bar of soap. Upon entering the bathroom, however, she saw a brand new bar of soap on the sink. Roxanne froze and stared at her two sons in confusion. Benny reached out and tugged at the hem of Roxanne's shirt, silently telling his mother that he wanted her to stop talking to Jack. Roxanne was overjoyed to receive the books and the herbs, so she got carried away talking to Jack. It wasn't until she saw Benny's actions that she recalled how much they disliked Jack. "Mr. Damaris is only here to give me something. He'll be leaving very soon. I can't kick him out now because that would be rude," she said with an awkward look on her face. Benny tugged even harder on her shirt and shook his head profusely. "No." Roxanne didn't have time to comfort him any further, so she just gave him a pat on the head and said, "Mr. Damaris is still waiting for me outside, so I need to get back to him now. Behave yourselves, okay?" She then stepped out of the bathroom and made her way back to the living room. Archie and Benny stayed in the bathroom for a little while longer before heading out. Roxanne was still chatting with Jack at the time. She had wanted to get him to leave as soon as possible, but Jack started talking about the ancient medicine books halfway through the conversation. Due to Roxanne's incredible passion for medicine, she couldn't help but get carried away talking about it again. It wasn't until Lisa told them dinner was ready that she snapped out of it. "Would you like to stay for dinner, Mr. Damaris?" Roxanne asked out of courtesy. Jack arched an eyebrow when he saw Archie and Benny standing next to the kitchen. They were both glaring daggers at him and looked like they would tear him to pieces if he accepted her invitation. Because they were still kids, they just looked adorable no matter how fierce their expressions were. Jack couldn't help but smile in amusement as he drawled suspensefully, "Thank you for the invitation, Miss Jarvis." He was halfway through his sentence when Benny cut him off. "I don't feel like eating anymore, Mommy. I want to give Daddy a call." Instead of finishing his sentence, Jack deliberately paused and gave Roxanne a confused look. Roxanne was caught completely off guard by Benny's words and began to panic. After taking a few seconds to regain her composure, she said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I dash." Jack nodded understandingly and interrupted her. "It's all right. I think the kids might be feeling unwell. You should go take a look at them." Roxanne flashed him a grateful smile before walking toward Archie and Benny. "Are you boys feeling unwell? Come on, let's go upstairs so I can have a look at you," as she said while leading them up the stairs. As they trailed behind their mother, Archie and Benny turned around and shot Jack another cautious glance. Jack simply responded by glancing back at them with a nonchalant smile. The smile on Roxanne's face faded the moment they got upstairs. She then stared at Archie and Benny with a stern expression, only to let out a helpless sigh when she saw the defiant looks on their faces. "Shh, Archie, Benny. Mr. Damaris is a guest, remember? You two need to be polite to him." But you said Mr. Damaris was going to leave soon. Why did you have him stay for dinner?" Benny asked with a displeased frown. "I've never seen Mommy treat Daddy this well before. I only did that out of basic courtesy. Besides, you two heard our conversation. We were just talking about medicine, that's all," Roxanne replied. She knew that Archie and Benny disliked Jack, but she wasn't expecting them to make it that obvious. Roxanne felt her head ache at the mere thought of what Benny said earlier. "Also, I only promised you two to call Mr. Farwell. I didn't say anything about him being your daddy, so don't go making stuff up now." While Jack wouldn't associate those words with Lucian, things could get problematic if these two say it in front of Lucian, especially considering the current state of our relationship. Benny threw a tantrum when he saw Roxanne defending Jack. I don't care. I want Mr. Farwell to be my daddy." Roxanne froze in shock when she heard that. She was well aware of how much Archie and Benny liked Lucian. Similarly, they also knew that she hadn't been seeing Lucian ever since things went south between them. As such, Roxanne was surprised to see them being so stubborn about this. For a moment there, she even wondered if it would be better to let Archie and Benny go with Lucian instead. However, she was quick to suppress that thought. "I've been working so hard all these years so I could live a comfortable life with Archie and Benny. All that hard work would be for nothing if I were to lose them." After taking some time to think about it, Roxanne bent over and patted Benny on the head. "You don't say such things ever again, okay? Mr. Farwell is Essie's daddy. As for you two, well, you'll get to have your own daddy someday," she said with an apologetic look on her face. Benny frowned and looked like he was about to say something in protest. "I know you two don't like Mr. Damaris. Don't worry, he and I are strictly business partners. I won't make you two call him daddy or anything," Roxanne added with a smile. "But I only want my daddy." Before Benny could voice his thought, however, Archie cut him off. "Understood, Mommy. One of our classmates came to us and asked about Essie today. Benny's just in a bad mood because he's worried about Essie. Just give us some time to ourselves and we'll be all right after a while." Archie then shot Benny a warning glance, prompting the latter to keep quiet. The look in Roxanne's eyes turned gloomy when she heard him mention Estella. "Mr. Farwell will take good care of Essie, so you two don't have to worry about her at all." Archie nodded obediently in response. "I'll be sure to talk to him about this. You should head back downstairs, Mommy. Mr. Damaris is still waiting for you." Had it not been for Archie's reminder, Roxanne would have completely forgotten about Jack. All right. You two stay here, okay? We'll have dinner together once Mr. Damaris leaves. She then patted them on their heads before rushing downstairs. Jack was casually reading one of the ancient medicine books on the couch. He looked up when he heard her footsteps and asked, how are the kids? Roxanne felt a little nervous as she replied, nothing much, really. They were just throwing a tantrum because they got into a fight with some kids at the kindergarten today. Jack nodded and pretended to be unaware of their hostility toward him. Yeah, kids are like that sometimes. You just have to be more attentive toward their emotions. Roxanne forced a smile at him and said with a nod, Thank you for the kind reminder, Mr. Damaris. I'll try to keep that in mind. She was about to invite him to stay for dinner, but the words were stuck in her throat when she looked at the dishes on the table. Of course, Jack noticed the subtle changes in her expression. Anyway, it's getting late. It's not often that my parents would come over to stay for a while, so I need to head back and have dinner with them. I'm afraid I won't be able to keep you company this time, he said with an ambiguous look in his eyes. Roxanne was just inviting him to stay for dinner out of courtesy, but he made it sound like she wanted his companionship. However, Roxanne's mind was in such a mess that she didn't realize how intimate his words sounded. In fact, she even felt a little relieved as she said, oh, that's all right. There's nothing more important than spending time with your family, after all. You should get going, Mr. Damaris. Wouldn't want to keep your parents waiting now, would you? Jack smilingly agreed, I'll take my leave first. Look through these medical books and contact me anytime if you have questions. Gratitude filled Roxanne's eyes. I will. Just like that, they walked toward the door one after another. Before getting into the car, Jack whipped his head back and cast Roxanne a mysterious glance. Noticing the man's gaze, Roxanne scrunched her brows in puzzlement. It's truly a pity to miss the opportunity to dine with you tonight, Miss Jarvis. Jack's face was plastered with disappointment. Roxanne was visibly stunned for a brief moment but politely replied, There'll be opportunities in the future. Besides, I still have to thank you for providing medicines for our research institute, Mr. Damaris. Jack arched an eyebrow. If you want to thank me, how about you personally whip up a meal for me, Ms. Jarvis? Without waiting for Roxanne's reply, Jack added, I'm sick of those restaurants out there, and I thought you probably have impressive cooking skills. I wonder if I have the privilege to taste the dishes you make. Roxanne couldn't say no since the man had put it that way. Thus, she could only agree. If you wish, Mr. Damaris, I can cook for you. But I hope you won't be disappointed. Jack raised his brows and chuckled. I won't be disappointed as long as you're the cook. As his words fell, he turned and got into the car. It's a deal then. You'll cook me a meal next time. It's late today, I'll head back first. Roxanne nodded absent-mindedly. Is it just me, or does his attitude seem a little weird just now? We have always been nothing more than business partners. Why would he suddenly request for me to cook him a meal? Isn't that a bit too intimate? After watching the car depart, Roxanne headed back into the mansion, overwhelmed with mixed feelings. Meanwhile, Archie and Benny came downstairs after hearing the commotion. Thinking about her promise to Jack just now, Roxanne could not help but feel a hint of guilt surge within her as she was aware of how repulsive the boys were toward Jack. The food's getting cold. Quick, come and eat. She was attempting to divert the kids' attention. Benny wore a sullen expression. Mommy, how long more do you have to work with Mr. Damaris? Roxanne frowned in frustration. That isn't something I can decide on. Benny had wanted to say something more, but Roxanne quickly scooped some food for him and said, that's enough. Hurry up and eat. Knowing that Roxanne did not want to harp on the subject anymore, the boy reluctantly zipped his mouth. As much as Archie had tried to explain the situation to him and told him how his actions would put Roxanne in a tight spot, Benny still could not control himself. Mommy hasn't had any contact with Daddy recently. In contrast, she meets Mr. Damaris almost every day. If this goes on, who knows if Mommy will feel something for Mr. Damaris? While those thoughts were running through Benny's mind, Roxanne was totally clueless about it. For some reason, she was especially troubled that day. For one, she was worried about Estella. And two, she felt something odd about Jack's behavior earlier. That was why she was not in the mood to care about Archie and Benny's feelings. As Roxanne finished the meal restlessly, she inevitably felt an unnerving feeling rise within her again as she recalled her promise to the boys that she would call Lucian to check on Estella's condition. Fortunately, it seemed like Archie and Benny had forgotten about the matter after Jack's sudden appearance and thus did not urge her about it. Roxanne secretly heaved a sigh of relief, pretended nothing had happened, and watched the boys fall asleep before returning to her room. Aubrey called Lucian when it was almost Estella's dismissal time and requested to pick the little girl up from school. Lucian did not give it too much thought and assented to it as he thought there wouldn't be a problem since the two were getting along fine earlier that morning. Ever since Estella got spooked out in class the other time, her classmates started to see her as a weirdo. For the entire day, many of her classmates shot her a look of disgust. Because of that, Estella did not want to play with them too. The arduous day at school made her miss Archie and Benny even more, and she was extra dejected after school. When the little girl followed behind the teacher and saw the person waiting for her at the entrance, her face immediately fell. Essie. Aubrey, not noticing the expression on the little girl's face, went up to her warmly. Pamela politely greeted Aubrey and took the initiative to share Estella's performance in school. Essie is a good girl in class today. It's just that she's not very familiar with the other children and so she isn't very enthusiastic during games. But I'm sure she'll do better after a few days. Hearing that, Aubrey bobbed her head in acknowledgement. Thank you so much. Pamela quickly plastered a smile on her face. It's what I should do. The credit should go to her parents for bringing her up well. Only after exchanging a few pleasantries with Pamela did Aubrey recollect that she had yet to finish her task, to fetch Estella back home. By then, the little girl was so hungry that her tummy had gone flat, and her gloomy mood became worse than before. Aubrey bade goodbye to Pamela apologetically and brought Estella into the car. Ms. Yaxley says you're not enthusiastic during games. Is it because you don't like the other kids in class? Estella's behavior that morning had probably given Aubrey the illusion that she could converse with the little girl casually. I know you want to play with those two boys, but they can't possibly come over to accompany you. That's why you have to try to make new friends soon. As soon as Aubrey finished speaking, Estella blew her top off and lashed out, I don't want to. Archie and Benny will come to visit me. I will still play with them in the future. I don't need new friends. Aubrey was taken aback by Estella's attitude. I'm saying it for your own good. You will only get well if you make more friends. I am not sick. Estella retorted. It was only then Aubrey realized she had said the wrong thing. I don't mean it that way. I merely thought. She wanted to make things right again, yet did not know how to continue. After all, that was exactly what she meant. It was just that she had forgotten to cover it up. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Can you forgive me, Essie? Aubrey carefully apologized after a short pause. Sadly, Estella did not bother to give her any form of response. Aubrey was undoubtedly in deep regret. It had not been easy for her to stop Estella from ignoring her. Yet now, their relationship had returned to square one because of her wrong choice of words. On their way home, Aubrey tried her best to salvage the situation. Despite her umpteen attempts at explaining herself, she failed to garner a response from the little girl again. As the car slowly rolled up at the Farwell residence's entrance, Aubrey felt an inexplicable sense of remorse surge within her. She recalled how Lucian said himself just that morning that her relationship with Estella had improved. Hence, she did not want him to see how things were between her and the little girl now. Unfortunately, Estella had absolutely no intention of cooperating with her and strode into the house with her bag. Lucian had just returned home from work as well. The minute he saw Estella walking in, he noticed the expression on her face. What's wrong?" Lucian asked concernedly as his brows knitted into one line. Estella, however, only pursed her lips and glanced at him silently. Without spouting a word, she headed upstairs with her bag. Aubrey followed Estella closely into the room. Hesitantly, she muttered, Lucian." She felt somewhat guilty when she noticed the young girl fuming at Lucian. At the same time, she was relieved that Estella had not said a word to her father. Lucian nodded at Aubrey and said, "Sorry for troubling you to look after Essie." Aubrey was delighted by his words. She sputtered, "Not at all. I'm happy to do this. Essie's a lovely girl." As for how she upset Estella in the car earlier, Aubrey decided to sweep things under the rug if the young girl kept things to herself. "Dinner's ready. Why don't you eat with us?" Lucian offered. Aubrey was over the moon. Sure." They entered the dining room one after another. Catalina had already set the table for 3. Aubrey said, "I'll go get Essie." Despite her suggestion, she was not confident about coaxing Estella downstairs. After all, the young girl was put out because of Aubrey, and she might not listen to her instructions. If she throws a tantrum in front of Lucian, amid her distress, Lucian piped up, "It's fine. She might be angry at me. She still doesn't like her new kindergarten. Let her calm down on her own." After that, Lucian picked up his cutlery and began eating. Aubrey stopped in her tracks, though the tension in her heart gradually eased. Still, she did not forget to put on her loving stepmother's act. Essie's still so young. She shouldn't be starving herself. If she doesn't want to come downstairs, Catalina, could you put together a plate and bring it upstairs? Now it was Catalina's turn to stiffen in shock. She was pleasantly surprised at Aubrey's thoughtfulness. She quickly collected herself and began filling a new plate with some food. Then, she brought the food upstairs to Estella, leaving Lucian and Aubrey alone in the dining room. Silence fell over the room. It was absolutely stifling, yet Aubrey quietly ate her dinner, as she dared not utter a single word. She had no idea how much time had passed before Lucian's voice suddenly rang out. How are Mr. and Mrs. Pearson?" Aubrey's heart skipped a beat. Elation bloomed in her chest. In the past, she had always been the one scrambling to find a topic of conversation between herself and Lucian. Now, however, Lucian took the lead and even asked after her parents. "Is this what I think it is?" The possibility filled her with hope, though Aubrey suppressed her excitement and feigned composure. They've been well. It's just that my dad, well..." Here, she trailed off and smiled wryly at Lucian before continuing. "You probably know how he had a huge argument with me after the whole issue with our engagement. He even kicked me out of the house. And he still hasn't let go of the topic after all this time. I've told him that you won't break off our engagement anymore, but he simply won't believe me." As she spoke, Aubrey carefully observed Lucian's expression. She noticed his brows creasing slightly, and she inadvertently tensed as she awaited his answer. "I can't be obvious enough with my hint. I wonder how he'll reply to that." Lucian was not a fool, and he immediately knew this was Aubrey's roundabout way of asking about their marriage. It was also a thinly veiled request for him to clear things up with her parents. But, despite making up his mind to go along with the engagement, he still felt irritated when Aubrey brought the topic up. It took him a long time to suppress his annoyance. In a low voice, he replied, "If you're free, help me arrange a meal with your parents. I haven't met them in a while." In a way, that remark answered Aubrey's hopes. As expected, Aubrey agreed happily to his request. Of course. I'll tell them about it tonight." Estella never appeared in the dining room, not even after Lucian and Aubrey had finished their dinner. Aubrey would not allow the young girl to throw a wrench in her plans, not after she had worked so hard to draw a promise out of Lucian regarding their engagement. After dinner, she offered to head upstairs and check on Essie. Lucian nodded indifferently in response. She trudged upstairs, her heart in her throat. Catalina stayed with Estella in her bedroom and watched as the latter slowly ate her dinner. When she spotted Aubrey at the door, Catalina greeted her amiably. "Je Miss Pearson." Aubrey nodded in acknowledgement and said, "You can head downstairs. I'd like to talk to Essie." Catalina hesitated briefly but had no excuse to protest the young woman's wishes. Eventually, she left the room. Aubrey and Estella found themselves alone. Estella puffed her cheeks indignantly and slammed her fork on the table. She turned around and jumped on the bed, wrapping herself in the blankets. Then, she busied herself playing with her doll, seemingly intent on ignoring Aubrey. Her behavior caused Aubrey's expression to fall. She hastily approached the girl and pleaded, Essie, I didn't mean to say those things about you. Won't you stop being mad at me, In the past, Aubrey would have lectured the girl for her tantrum. However, Estella now held the key to her future, and Aubrey had no choice but to worship the girl on a pedestal. Estella kept her head lowered and ignored Aubrey's pleas. Aubrey gritted her teeth and said, Can you promise me not to tell your father about what I said to you in the car? Please. I promise I'll never say those things about you again. Estella harumphed softly at her words. She had no plans to tell her father about Aubrey's words in the first place. Though she hated admitting it, Estella knew something was indeed wrong with her. Still, even if she told her father about it, he would only say that Aubrey should not have made those remarks. Telling him would not achieve anything. Meanwhile, Aubrey took Estella's silence as an agreement and sighed in relief. Well then, you should get some rest. I'll be here tomorrow to bring you to school. After finishing that sentence, Aubrey turned and headed for the door. Still worried, Aubrey stopped at the door and added, I promise I'll take good care of you in the future. Be a good girl, okay? Only after she closed the bedroom door did Estella drop the doll in her hands. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring her vision. I miss Ms. Jarvis, Archie, and Benny so much. Downstairs, Lucian watched Aubrey leave. Though his thoughts remained on his sulking daughter concerned, he headed upstairs to check on Estella. His daughter was brooding under her blanket when he arrived. When she heard her bedroom door opening, she thought Aubrey had returned and wrapped the blanket tighter around herself. Lucian furrowed his brows in concern at her reaction. Essie. Her father's voice coaxed Estella out of the cocoon of her blanket. What's with you today? Why are you so upset? Asked Lucian as he sat beside his daughter. Estella sniffled and shot her father a pitiful look. Daddy, I don't want my new school. Frowning, Lucian said, If you don't like your current kindergarten, I'll transfer you to a new one. She clung to his sleeve and wailed, no. I want to go back. No. Lucian rejected her pleas coldly. Realizing Estella was about to burst into tears, Lucian forced himself to soften his tone as he cajoled her. Essie, don't throw a tantrum. I've made up my mind about this. I won't change it easily. Estella said piteously with teary eyes. I want to talk to Ms. Jarvis, Archie, and Benny. Lucian could not bear to see his precious daughter crying, so he stroked her head and comforted her. How about another day when I'm not busy? Really? Estella grabbed his sleeves and probed. If Daddy is willing to give Ms. Jarvis a phone call, does that mean there are chances for them to reconcile? Lucian nodded without a change in expression, the yes. Essie would have come to accept Aubrey by the time I finish my work. She won't bother me to make the phone call by then. Unaware of Lucian's thoughts, Estella broke into a smile as she thought her father would eventually call Roxanne. Afraid that Estella would mention Roxanne again, Lucian patted her head and said, all right, get some rest. I have work to do. Estella nodded obediently as she watched Lucian get up to leave. Meanwhile, Aubrey was driving to the Pearson residence with delight. As soon as she walked through the door, Gina called out to her. What took you so long? Did Lucian ask you to stay for a meal? Gina knew that Aubrey went to pick up Estella from school. At that moment, Aubrey was in a great mood. Upon hearing Gina's question, she was suddenly reminded of something and sat down beside her mother with a smile, holding the latter's arm. Feeling puzzled, Gina asked, what did you guys talk about to make you so happy? Aubrey grinned and replied, when are you free? Lucian wants to treat you to a meal. What? A joyous smile formed on Gina's face instantly. They had waited for this moment for years. They had invited Lucian for a meal dozens of times throughout the years, but the latter turned down their offer each time. Therefore, they could not believe that Lucian would take the initiative to meet them this time. Aubrey smiled proudly, extremely pleased with herself. Lucian was the one who proposed it. I was taken aback too. Astonishment flooded Gina once again. What's wrong with Lucian these days? Why the sudden change? As soon as she finished the sentence, she remembered something and pursued, how's your relationship with Estella now? Upon hearing Estella's name, Aubrey felt her head hurt. We were fine this morning, and even Lucian thought we were getting along quite well. However, when we got home from kindergarten, Gina's heart sank at once. What went wrong? Aubrey told her what had happened in the car. Panic seized Gina when she learned that Aubrey had made Estella upset again. Lucian must have believed that Estella has accepted you, which is why he's treating us to a meal. This can't go on. You have to fix your relationship with Estella. Aubrey was also filled with frustration. The smile on her face faded away slowly when she heard her mother's words. I'm also thinking of a way. Frowning, Gina looked at Aubrey and suggested, since Lucian has invited us for a meal, I don't think he will oppose it if you want to stay at the Farwell residence. Aubrey's eyes lit up when she heard Gina's suggestion. I almost forgot about that. If I can stay in the manor, I can spend more time with Estella. By then, I won't have to worry about not having the opportunity to strengthen our ties. With that in mind, Aubrey came up with an idea. Gina's voice sounded again. What happened between Lucian and Roxanne? Lucian's persistence toward Roxanne was evident to all of them. Therefore, they were curious about his sudden change of mind. Hearing her mother mention Roxanne, Aubrey was a little irritated. Is she even worth mentioning? Since Lucian had decided to meet Aubrey's parents officially, that meant they were only a step away from getting married. From her perspective, regretting this decision would not be one of Lucian's options. However, that was not enough to soothe Gina's worries. In any case, Roxanne is still Estella's biological mother. What if Lucian regrets it? There is nothing we can do if he chooses to go back on his word. Aubrey's heart sank when she heard that. I've come this far, and I won't allow Lucian to regret it again. However, her concern did not go unnoticed. Gina said faintly, if you don't want Lucian to go back on his words, you must figure out what happened between them. If there is a misunderstanding between them, we will prevent them from clearing it up. An icy glint flashed across Aubrey's eyes. I got it. Gina looked at her daughter as mixed feelings surged within her heart. I hope you won't blame me for dampening your spirits. We've waited for 6 years, and we're not going to wait any longer. Aubrey smiled. I should be thanking you for reminding me. The two chatted about Lucian for a while before Aubrey returned to her room. After being blackmailed by Corey the last time, Corey left Aubrey another new contact number that Lucian would not find out. Deep down, Aubrey still had her reservations. However, her mother's reminder left her no choice but to risk it and give it a shot. She gritted her teeth and tried making the call. The person on the other end answered almost immediately. Miss Pearson, can I help you? Corey's lazy voice sounded over the phone. Aubrey couldn't help hesitating. This man ripped me off. Is it wise to work with him again? However, he is the only person who can escape Lucian's investigation. Corey was starting to get impatient on the other end of the line. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. It's late, and we private detectives have to get some sleep too. You wait. Aubrey hastily stopped him from hanging up. I need to talk to you. Corey arched a brow. Oh. What else do you have to say? I did not owe you anything in your previous commission. If you have another request, you will have to pay extra. Corey was apparently trying to rip Aubrey off again. Aubrey clenched her fists tightly. I've given you 10 million. What you did previously isn't even worth that much. As soon as she finished saying that, she heard Corey sneering. I'm afraid you've misunderstood. The 10 million you gave me is for my service fee and the price of buying the photos I've taken. Or do you think those photos are worthless? Aubrey gritted her teeth. How much more do you want? Without any hesitation, Corey named his price. 10 million. Another 10 million. Aubrey flew into a rage. Don't cross the line. We are in the same boat, remember? Corey shrugged nonchalantly and said, That's why I ask for this much. Don't forget that Mr. Farwell's men are tailing me now. It's way harder to stalk him now. After saying that, he turned to look around. Lucian's men were still watching him in the shadows. Although Lucian had decided to cut ties with Roxanne, in the end, Estella was also one of the victims who suffered previously. Naturally, Lucian would not let the mastermind go easily. Aubrey could not refute Corey's words. After weighing the pros and cons, she clenched her teeth and agreed to the latter's request. All right, but you must do a good job. Corey was in a good mood, knowing he had once again made a fortune. He then said, Of course. Miss Pearson, I'm sure you've come to me again because you believe in my capabilities. Now, tell me, what is it that you want me to investigate? Narrowing her eyes, Aubrey said, Investigate what happened between Roxanne and Lucian. Corey let out a meaningful chuckle when he heard what she said. Aubrey questioned coldly, why are you laughing? As if unaware of her anger, Corey muttered, Since you've agreed to the price I proposed so readily, I have to show you something. With that, he took out a phone from the bag beside him and typed away on the screen. Soon, Aubrey received a few messages on her phone. I believe what you're about to see won't disappoint you, Miss Pearson. Corey sounded confident. Aubrey furrowed her brows and swiped open her phone, checking the messages he sent. The chat interface showed that Corey had sent her more than 10 pictures. Each picture was attached with the time it was taken. Those were recent pictures of Roxanne and Jack hanging out together. Judging from the date attached, the two had been meeting each other almost every day. Moreover, they seemed intimate with each other in the pictures. Aubrey was hesitant. What does this mean? Are you trying to suggest that Jack was why Lucian and Roxanne separated? On the other end of the line, Corey said in a mischievous tone, come to think of it, it's kind of amusing. The princess of the Farwell family stayed overnight at Miss Jarvis' house. The next morning, Mr. Demorris came. After that, Mr. Farwell came in the afternoon as well. Then, he left with her daughter and never returned to Miss Jarvis' place again. There must be some correlation between these two incidents judging by the time they happened. However, Aubrey was still doubtful. Roxanne and Jack meeting up frequently was no longer something new. Before this, she had tried disclosing this matter to Lucian, but nothing significant happened. Lucian indeed got furious, but he didn't cut off contact with Roxanne because of it. However, Aubrey couldn't think of anything other than this that would possibly cause Lucian and Roxanne's separation. Consequently, she was filled with puzzlement. A few moments later, Aubrey broke the silence. It shouldn't be this simple. Continue to investigate and find out why Lucian and Roxanne separated. Otherwise, you will not receive a penny from me. Miss Pearson, are you threatening me? Corey's tone turned cold. Roxanne was momentarily at a loss for words. After struggling to suppress her anger, she said, my apologies. I shouldn't have said that. I'm counting on you. Satisfied with her response, Corey scoffed, that's better. Don't forget that we're not in a simple employer-employee relationship. He then hung up without giving her a chance to reply. Aubrey's face clouded over as she stared at the darkened phone screen. I swear I won't show Corey any mercy once I've become Mrs. Farwell in the future. She then remembered something and scrolled through the pictures Corey sent her. A cold glint flashed across her eyes as she looked at the way Roxanne and Jack interacted with each other in the pictures. Regardless of the reason behind Lucian and Roxanne's separation, Roxanne's relationship with Jack is still worthy of exploitation. It'd be even better if I can get something to actually happen between them. However, she couldn't come up with a plan for the time being. Hence, she needed to discuss with someone how to put her idea into action. Remembering her task of bringing Estella to school tomorrow, Aubrey set an alarm for 6 o'clock in the morning. She felt extremely irritated when the alarm rang the next morning, disturbing her slumber. Last night, she barely got any sleep as she couldn't stop thinking about Roxanne and Jack. She had only slept for 3 to 4 hours. Raising her hand to turn off the alarm, she closed her eyes, wanting to go back to sleep. But I still need to gain Lucian's favor. After lazing around under the covers for a while, Aubrey reluctantly climbed out of bed, suppressing her anger. She then went downstairs after washing up. Gina was leisurely watering the flowers downstairs and was surprised to see her daughter up so early. "Oh, why are you up so early?" Still grumpy from lack of sleep, Aubrey's expression was grim. I have to send Essie to school." Hearing that, Gina bobbed her head understandingly. You should. You're suffering now in exchange for a bright and happy future after you marry Lucian. Hang in there. Aubrey was, of course, aware of this. Otherwise, she wouldn't have woken up this early in the morning. Did you look into what I told you last night?" Gina turned to look at her daughter after she finished watering the flowers. At the thought of that matter, Aubrey nodded with furrowed brows. "Yes, I asked someone to investigate it, but I'm not sure what's the reason." She had been pondering about it all night long. According to the information Corey had provided her, Roxanne's daily routine hardly changed during this period. It won't make sense to say that Lucian gave up on Roxanne because of her relationship with Jack. Roxanne is already on friendly terms with Jack before she and Lucian had a fallout. However, if that wasn't the case, Aubrey couldn't think of another reason. Seeing that her daughter had taken what she said into consideration, Gina stopped saying anything else. After the two had a simple breakfast, Aubrey drove to the Farwell residence. When she arrived, Lucian was having breakfast with Estella. The man frowned slightly when he saw Aubrey. Why are you here this early in the morning?" Aubrey said, beaming. "Farwell Group is quite far away from Essie's kindergarten, and it'd be quite inconvenient for you to make a trip there. So, I was thinking I'd do it instead." With that, she flashed Estella an amicable smile. Estella pursed her lips in silence as she remembered what had happened between them yesterday. Lucian, on the other hand, pondered for a moment, feeling inexplicably awkward. Estella stayed with Roxanne for some time before she transferred to the new kindergarten. Back then, Roxanne would be the one sending Estella to school. Now, however, Estella had transferred to another kindergarten, and the person who sent her to school had also changed. A self-deprecating look flashed across Lucian's eyes when he realized what he was thinking. "I've already decided to cut ties with Roxanne. So why am I still thinking about her?" Aubrey felt somewhat uneasy when she didn't get a response from Lucian after a long time, thinking he was giving her the cold shoulder again. If you have already asked someone else to send Essie, I'll." Before she could finish her sentence, Lucian's deep voice sounded. "You're here just in time. Have you had breakfast? If not, come join us." When Aubrey heard that, her eyes lit up suddenly. It's fine. I got up very early, so I've already eaten." After that, she pointed at the couch cautiously. "I'll sit on the couch and wait."
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.